how to stitch as an attachment, and stitching is sewing. So I took another piece of my cardboard I had and I just cut it into 2 smaller pieces. In order to sew, you might need holes, thinking about like how a shoe laces up. If you have a hole punch, you can punch your holes, but we're gonna go really basic and assume you don't have a hole punch, and I'll show you an easy way to get those holes. You can do the punching a hole with a closed pair of scissors. Remember, the safe way to do it is hold the handle and then you can press and twist to get a hole. Press and twist. This one with scissors, you see how this is buckling a little bit? That's because I'm using a thinner cardboard, so it just depends on how thick your cardboard is. If your cardboard's really thin, like this one, and you can see I've got some holes there, a nice ballpoint pen or a dull pencil are also great tools for poking a hole in cardboard. And because the tip is much smaller than the tip of the scissor point, this is gonna go in a little bit easier without buckling as much. You see that? So I've got some holes here. The number of holes you make just depends on how tight you want your stitching to be or how big your piece of cardboard is. So I've got some here, and I've got my string, and I don't have a needle, so I'm gonna go back now with my scissors, and I'm just gonna make that hole slightly bigger. Now I can take my string, come through, poke and pull, and you can go back and forth like that. I'm gonna cut the knot off of that one. Pushing through, pull it. If you have a needle, it does make it easier, but obviously you can do it without a needle too. I'm not using a needle on mine. You just have to make sure that your hole, if it's too small to get your thread through easily, that you just make the hole a little bit bigger. Like this hole, I'm gonna adjust it a little bit. If you want that hole to be very small, using a needle would be best, but I want you to see that it is definitely possible to do this technique with very limited supplies. So I've left this loose because it depends on if you want those 2 pieces to be able to move a lot. Now that I've come to the end, maybe I decide that I want it to be a little bit tighter, so I'm gonna close it and I'm gonna pull it tight. And then I'm gonna tie it off. And you could tie yours off at each end of the hole, depending on what you're trying to make. So that is the stitching technique. It's basically giving yourself holes that you can then go back and run thread through. And it's a nice one because it allows for movement. So you can kind of have a hinge effect when you use stitching.